There is a question that almost no one asks. Not because it is difficult, not because the answer is hidden in some ancient text locked away in a vault somewhere, but because the self-help industry, the billion-dollar machine built around the promise of a better life, has a powerful financial interest in making sure you never think to ask it. The question is this: before you try to attract something into your life, who is doing the attracting? Take a moment with that. Not what are you trying to attract, not how are you trying to attract it, not which technique, which visualization, which affirmation, which morning routine. Who is doing the attracting? Because the law of attraction, as it has been taught to you, begins at step 3 of a 5-step process. And without steps 1 and 2, step 3 cannot work. It was never designed to work. It is like trying to start a car by pressing the accelerator when the engine has not been turned on. You press and press. Nothing happens. And the industry tells you, press harder, believe more, visualize more clearly, raise your vibration, buy the next program, attend the next seminar. And still, for most people, the car does not start. This audiobook is about steps 1 and 2. The steps they never explained. The steps that must happen inside you, at a level far deeper than conscious thought, far deeper than positive affirmation, far deeper than anything you have been taught to access, before the law of attraction can respond to you the way the books promised it would. What you are about to hear is not a new technique. It is not another method to add to the collection. It is an explanation, a complete, unflinching explanation of why the system fails for most people, and what is actually required before it can work. If you have ever applied the law of attraction faithfully and not gotten what you wanted, this is for you. If you have ever felt that something deeper was missing from the teaching you received, this is for you. If you have ever suspected that the version of this knowledge that became popular was somehow incomplete, you were right, and you are about to find out exactly what was left out. Stay with this. What comes next will not leave you the same. Chapter 1. Why most people fail. Let us begin with honesty. The law of attraction does not work for most people who try it. Not because the principle is false. The principle is not false. At its deepest level, the idea that consciousness shapes reality is one of the most well-documented phenomena in human experience, reported across every culture, every tradition, every era of recorded history, and increasingly confirmed by the edges of modern physics. The principle is not false, but the teaching is incomplete, and an incomplete map of a true territory will get you lost just as reliably as a false one. Here is what the standard teaching gives you. It tells you that your thoughts attract corresponding realities, that what you focus on expands, that you must visualize your desired outcome clearly, feel the emotion of already having it, and trust that the universe will deliver. This is true. This is also approximately 30% of the actual mechanism. The other 70%, the part that determines whether the 30% you have been given actually works, is what this book is about. To understand why most people fail, you need to understand something about the architecture of the human mind that almost no popular teaching on this subject ever clearly explains. Your mind operates on 2 levels simultaneously. The first level is conscious. It is the part of you that is listening to these words right now. The part that chooses what to think, what to believe, what to want. The part that does your morning affirmations, writes in your gratitude journal, and holds the visualization of the life you are trying to create. This part of your mind is powerful, but it is not the part that governs your reality. The second level is subconscious. It is the part operating beneath your awareness at every moment, regulating your heartbeat, monitoring your environment, processing millions of pieces of information simultaneously, and most importantly, executing the deep programs that were written into it long before you had any conscious say in the matter. Programs about who you are, what you deserve, what is possible for someone like you, what always happens in the end. This part of your mind does not respond to affirmations. It does not update based on what you consciously choose to believe. It runs its programs with mechanical consistency, regardless of what your conscious mind is doing on the surface. And here is the thing that changes everything. The law of attraction does not respond to your conscious mind. It responds to the dominant signal being generated by your entire mind, conscious and subconscious combined. When your conscious mind says, "I am abundant, I am attracting wealth, I am worthy of love and success," and your subconscious simultaneously runs a program that says, "People like me do not get those things. I have tried before and it has not worked. Deep down, I do not believe this will be different." The law of attraction receives both signals, and it responds to the stronger one. The subconscious program, encoded over decades of lived experience, is almost always stronger than the conscious intention formed during a 10-minute morning practice. This is not a failure of willpower. It is not a failure of belief. It is not a spiritual deficiency. It is a mismatch between the surface and the root. And no amount of surface-level technique, no visualization, no affirmation, no vision board, no matter how faithfully applied, can overcome a contradicting root program. Not because these tools are worthless, but because they are operating on the wrong level. They are whispering into a room where something much louder is already speaking. Consider what happens when a person decides to manifest a significant financial change in their life. They begin. They visualize. They affirm. They hold the feeling of abundance. They do everything they have been taught to do. And somewhere in the background, quietly, persistently, a voice that does not use words says, "This is not for you. You have tried things before. Remember how that turned out. Remember what your father said about money. Remember every time you came close and it slipped away." That voice is not a thought. It is a frequency. A deep, consistent, powerfully encoded frequency generated by the subconscious mind. And it is broadcasting into the same field as the conscious intention. The field receives both. And what manifests is not the intention. It is the compromise between the intention and the frequency. Which is why so many people using the law of attraction attract almost what they want. They make progress, but not quite enough. They get close, but something stops them. They improve, but the ceiling stays exactly where their subconscious program places it. This is not a mystery. It is cause and effect. And understanding this, truly understanding it, not as an interesting idea, but as the operational reality of how your mind interacts with the field of potential around you, is the beginning of everything. Because once you understand where the failure actually lives, you stop trying to fix it at the wrong level. You stop adding more techniques to a surface that is not the problem. You go deeper, to the root. And that is where this book begins. Chapter 2. The missing layer between your conscious intention and the reality it is trying to create. There is a layer. Most teachings on the law of attraction skip it entirely. Not because it is unimportant, because it is inconvenient. Because addressing it honestly requires something that does not fit neatly into a 7-step program or a weekend seminar. It requires you to look at yourself, not the self you present to the world, not the self you aspire to be, the self that is actually running beneath both of those, the self built from every experience you have ever had, every message you have ever absorbed, every wound that never fully healed, and every belief that formed around it like scar tissue. This layer has many names across many traditions. Psychologists call it the unconscious. Ancient wisdom traditions call it the shadow, or the inner world, or the seat of the soul. Atkinson, writing at the turn of the 20th century, called it the subconscious atmosphere. Whatever name you give it, the reality is the same. It is the deepest layer of who you are. The layer where your true beliefs live, not the beliefs you have chosen consciously, but the beliefs that were formed before you were old enough to choose. The beliefs that run automatically, that color every perception, that shape every decision and every response, and every relationship and every financial outcome in your life. And it is invisible to you, not because it is hidden in some mystical sense, but because it is so fundamental to how you process reality that it feels like reality itself. Fish do not notice water. You do not notice your deepest subconscious programs, because they are the medium through which you experience everything. They are not a lens through which you see the world. They are the world, as far as your nervous system is concerned. This is what makes them so powerful and so difficult to change. Think about a belief that was formed in childhood, not a belief you chose, a belief that formed from experience. Perhaps a belief about whether you are fundamentally worthy of good things. Perhaps a belief about whether money is something people like you have access to, or something that belongs to other kinds of people. Perhaps a belief about whether relationships end in hurt, or whether success is something that lasts, or whether the good things that arrive in your life tend to stay or tend to slip away. These beliefs were not formed through argument. They were formed through experience, through the accumulated weight of 1,000 small moments that your young nervous system processed and encoded into a worldview. And that worldview now runs your life. Not your goals, not your intentions, not your vision board or your affirmations or your carefully cultivated positive mindset. The worldview formed before you were 10 years old. This is the missing layer. The layer that sits between what you consciously want and what actually manifests. And here is what makes it the forbidden part of this teaching. The part the industry does not discuss, because discussing it honestly means confronting something uncomfortable. You cannot bypass this layer. You cannot positive think your way over it. You cannot affirm your way around it. You cannot visualize your way past it. You have to go through it. You have to see it, name it, understand where it came from and what function it was serving when it formed. And then, through a specific, deliberate, patient process, you have to change it at the level at which it exists, not at the conscious level, at the subconscious level. This is what comes before manifestation, not better visualization, not stronger belief, not higher vibration, in the way that word is commonly used. The actual work of becoming, at the deepest level, a different person. A person whose subconscious programs are aligned with, rather than contradicting, what the conscious mind is trying to create. When that alignment exists, when the surface and the root are broadcasting the same signal, the law of attraction responds with a consistency and a power that people who have only worked at the surface level have never experienced. Because they have never experienced it without interference. They have been pressing the accelerator with the engine off. You are about to learn how to turn the engine on. But first, you need to understand something about the nature of the subconscious mind that changes everything about how you approach this work. The subconscious does not communicate in words. It does not speak in affirmations. It does not respond to logical argument. It does not update through intellectual understanding. It speaks in feeling, in image, in sensation, in the quality of energy that moves through your body when a certain situation arises, or a certain memory surfaces, or a certain possibility presents itself. That feeling, that quality of energy, is the language of the subconscious, and it is the language you must learn to work with if you are going to change what it is broadcasting. Not the words you say to yourself, the feeling beneath the words, not the thought, the frequency that carries the thought. This distinction between the word and the frequency, between the thought and the feeling that underlies it, is the heart of everything that follows in this book. Hold it with you. It will become clearer with every chapter. Chapter 3. What comes before? The question this entire book is built around is this: what comes before manifestation? What must exist inside you before the law of attraction can operate at its full potential? The answer is not what most people expect. It is not stronger desire. Most people who fail at manifestation do not lack desire. They want what they want with genuine intensity. It is not greater belief. Most people who apply these principles genuinely believe, at the conscious level, that what they want is possible. It is not more consistent practice. Most people who work with these ideas do so with real commitment and real consistency. What comes before manifestation, what must be present before the mechanism can operate cleanly, is something older than any of these. something that most people have never been taught to cultivate deliberately, something that, in its absence, makes every technique you apply feel like pushing water uphill, and in its presence, makes the attraction of what you want feel less like effort and more like remembering something you already knew. That something is coherence. Not coherence in the way the word is usually used, not coherence as a synonym for consistency or logic. Coherence in the precise sense, the state in which every level of your being is broadcasting the same signal. When your conscious mind intends abundance, and your subconscious generates abundance, and your body carries the felt sense of abundance, and your deepest identity knows itself to be someone who is in a natural relationship with abundance. That is coherence. And in that state, the law of attraction does not require effort. It is simply an accurate description of what happens naturally when a coherent signal enters the field. The problem is that coherence, for most people, does not exist. What exists instead is fragmentation, a conscious mind that wants one thing and a subconscious that generates another, a surface self that speaks the language of possibility and a deep self that speaks the language of limitation, an intention going in one direction and a history, a pattern, an identity going in the opposite direction. This fragmentation is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of spiritual inadequacy. It is the natural result of being a human being who has lived through the normal experiences of a human life, who has been hurt, disappointed, limited, told no, failed, and had to construct a worldview that protected you from further harm. The subconscious programs that contradict your conscious intentions are not your enemies. They are old protections that have outlived the threats they were built for. They were formed to keep you safe in a world you experienced as a child. They made sense then. They are not serving you now. And the first step in creating coherence is understanding them with compassion rather than fighting them with force. Because you cannot force coherence. You can only cultivate it. You cultivate it by doing something that the self-help industry almost never tells you to do. You slow down. You go inward. You stop adding more techniques, more practices, more tools, more information, and you begin subtracting. You subtract the noise, the constant motion, the relentless forward momentum that keeps you so busy acquiring the next method that you never stop to feel what is actually present inside you right now. Because what is present inside you right now, beneath the strategies and the intentions and the carefully maintained optimism, is the truth. The truth of what your subconscious is actually generating, what frequency it is actually broadcasting, what signal the law of attraction is actually receiving from you in this moment, beneath all your conscious effort. Most people never feel this truth, because feeling it requires stillness. And stillness is uncomfortable when the truth it reveals is not what you want it to be. But here is what you need to understand about that discomfort. It is not the obstacle. It is the doorway. The moment you can be still enough to feel the actual signal your subconscious is generating, without immediately trying to fix it or override it, or positive think it into something else, that moment is the beginning of real change. Because you cannot change what you cannot see. And you cannot see what you will not be still enough to feel. This is the first practice, not a technique, a posture. The posture of radical honesty with yourself about where you actually are, not where you intend to be, not where your affirmations say you are, where you actually are, in your body, in your feeling, in the quality of the signal you are broadcasting right now, in this moment, beneath everything you have constructed on top of it. Sit with that for a moment. What is the actual feeling in your body when you think about the thing you most want to manifest? Not the feeling you think you should have, not the feeling you are trying to cultivate, the feeling that is actually there. For most people, when they are honest, truly honest, there is something beneath the desire, beneath the intention, beneath the hope, a tightness, a holding, a whisper of not quite believing, a subtle quality of seeking something that does not yet feel fully real. That subtle quality is the signal. That is what the law of attraction is responding to. Not the affirmation, not the vision board, not the stated intention. The subtle, honest, bodily felt truth of what you believe at the level of your subconscious programming. Now, here is what changes when you acknowledge this honestly, rather than bypassing it to get to the technique. When you acknowledge it, you make it visible. And when it is visible, it becomes workable. You can see where the program came from. You can understand the experience that encoded it. You can recognize that it was not a truth about you. It was a response to an experience. And a response to an experience can be changed, not by forcing a different response, not by willing yourself to feel something different, by doing something far more powerful, by going back to the origin of the program, understanding it with full presence, and creating, in that understanding, a new experience that begins to encode a new response. This is the process. This is what comes before manifestation, not better technique on top of a contradicting route. A new route. And in the chapters that follow, you will learn exactly how to create it. Chapter 4. The subconscious contract. Before you were old enough to choose your beliefs, your subconscious mind made a contract. You did not sign it consciously. You did not agree to its terms with full awareness. But it was made nonetheless, formed from the accumulated evidence of your early experiences, written into the operating system of your mind before you had the cognitive development to question it. The contract said, in essence, this is how the world works. This is who I am within it. This is what I can expect. This is what tends to happen to people like me. That contract is running your life. Not your goals, not your highest aspirations, not the version of yourself you know you are capable of becoming. The contract. And the reason that most attempts to change your life fail, the reason that most applications of the law of attraction produce limited or no results, is that they try to build on top of the contract without ever renegotiating it. You are trying to attract a wealthy future, while the contract says money is scarce and uncertain. You are trying to manifest deep love, while the contract says relationships end in loss. You are trying to create success, while the contract says that kind of success is for other kinds of people. The new intentions sit on the surface. The contract runs underneath. And the contract, being older, being deeper, being encoded in the most fundamental architecture of how your nervous system processes reality, wins every time. This is not a metaphor. This is neurological reality. The subconscious programs encoded in early childhood are stored in the limbic system, the oldest, deepest part of your brain. They were formed when the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for conscious reasoning and choice, was not yet developed enough to evaluate and override them. They were written at a level that conscious thinking, by its nature, cannot easily reach, which is why conscious thinking, by itself, cannot change them. You can understand intellectually that your fear of failure is rooted in something that happened when you were 8 years old. You can know, with complete rational clarity, that the experience that formed the program is long past, and the program is no longer serving you. And the program will still run, because understanding is not the same as reprogramming. The language of the subconscious is not logic. It is experience. It is feeling. It is the body's lived sense of what is real and what is possible. So what reprograms the subconscious is not better reasoning. It is new experience. Specifically, new experience at the level of feeling. Experiences that introduce, at the body level, a different truth than the one the contract encoded. This is the beginning of renegotiating the contract. And here is what is important to understand about this process. It does not require returning to the past. It does not require years of therapy, though therapy has its place. It does not require a dramatic breakthrough moment or a sudden awakening. It requires something quieter. It requires the capacity to generate, from within yourself, the felt sense of a different reality, and to hold that felt sense with enough consistency and enough depth that the subconscious begins to register it as experience, not fantasy, not wishful thinking. Experience. There is a profound difference between imagining a feeling and actually feeling it, between picturing a state and inhabiting a state, between the mental representation of an emotion and the full-body lived reality of that emotion. Most visualization practices produce the former, a mental image of the desired state, accompanied by a pale echo of the feeling associated with it. What reprograms the subconscious requires the latter, the full, embodied, visceral reality of the feeling itself. Present, real, happening now. When you can generate that, when you can access the genuine felt sense of the reality you are trying to create, not as a hope, but as a present experience, you are speaking the language the subconscious understands. And when the subconscious receives that experience repeatedly, consistently, over time, it begins to update, not because you convinced it, not because you argued it out of its old program, because you gave it new evidence. Because at the level where the original contract was written, the level of felt embodied experience, something new is now being registered. And the subconscious, which is nothing more than an extraordinarily sophisticated pattern recognition and prediction system, begins to update its predictions, begins to expect something different, begins to broadcast something different, and the field responds to the different broadcast. This is the mechanism. This is how the law of attraction actually works when it works completely, not from the top down, intention producing result, from the inside out, felt reality generating the field that produces the corresponding outer reality. The conscious intention is the starting point. The felt experience is the mechanism. The subconscious reprogramming is the process. And what manifests is the result of all three working in alignment. That alignment is what you are building toward, chapter by chapter, right now. Chapter 5. The Forbidden Step. There is a step in the process of conscious creation that almost no popular teaching includes. It is not included because it is difficult. It is not included because it requires special knowledge or training. It is not included because acknowledging its necessity means admitting something that the self-help industry is fundamentally uncomfortable admitting. That before you can create what you want, you must first face what is. Fully, honestly, without flinching. This is the forbidden step. Not forbidden in the sense of prohibited, forbidden in the sense of actively avoided, in the sense of being quietly edited out of every program and every course and every best-selling book that promises to teach you how to manifest your dreams. Because facing what is, truly facing it, with full presence and without the instinct to immediately fix it or reframe it or positive think it into something more palatable, is profoundly uncomfortable. And the self-help industry is, at its core, in the business of making you feel good, not making you whole, making you feel good. These are not the same thing. Making you feel good means emphasizing the techniques that generate immediate positive emotion. Visualization feels good. Affirmation feels good. Focusing on what you want feels good. The thought of a better future feels good. Making you whole means being willing to look at what is actually present in you right now, including the parts that do not feel good, including the fear, the doubt, the old wounds, the places where the contract is still running its programs unopposed because you have been too busy practicing gratitude to notice they are there. The forbidden step is this. Before you practice the presence of what you want, you must practice the full presence of what you have, not the physical circumstances of your life. Those are simply the current output of your current programming. What you must be fully present with is the internal state that is generating those circumstances. The actual quality of feeling that lives in you right now when you are not performing optimism, when you are alone, when you are not applying any technique, when the morning routine is done and the quiet of an ordinary moment reveals what is actually present underneath. That quality of feeling is your current broadcast. And you cannot change your broadcast without first hearing it clearly. Most people resist this step with extraordinary creativity. They practice more technique. They add more affirmations. They immerse themselves more deeply in positive content. They surround themselves with people who will reinforce the vision, and away from people who might challenge it. All of this is, in its own way, a form of not looking, a sophisticated, spiritually dressed form of the same avoidance that keeps the subconscious program running unchallenged beneath the surface of all that beautiful positive energy. Here is what happens when you finally stop and look. When you sit with what is, with the actual felt quality of your subconscious broadcast, in its raw and unpolished form, something surprising occurs. It does not get worse. It gets visible. And visible, as we discussed in the previous chapter, is workable. The fear that you have been avoiding does not grow larger when you look at it directly. It reveals its origin. It shows you the moment it was formed. It stops being a formless, nameless, ever-present weight and becomes something specific, something that happened in a specific moment to a specific version of you who had very good reasons for responding to that moment the way they did. And specific things can be addressed. Formless things cannot. This is why the forbidden step is so powerful. Not because facing what is resolves it automatically, but because facing it is the prerequisite for everything that comes next. You cannot renegotiate a contract you cannot see. You cannot change a frequency you have never clearly heard. You cannot reprogram the subconscious at the level of feeling until you have been fully present with the feelings that are actually there. The forbidden step is not a step backward. It is not the opposite of manifestation practice. It is the foundation of it. It is what makes everything that comes after it real rather than performed. Here is how to take it. Find a moment of genuine stillness, not forced stillness, the kind of rigid, uncomfortable, I am supposed to be meditating stillness. Genuine stillness, a moment when you are not required to be anywhere or do anything. And in that stillness, ask yourself one question, not what do I want to create, but what am I actually feeling right now beneath everything I am trying to create? And then, this is the forbidden part. Do not try to change the answer. Do not reframe it. Do not look for the lesson in it. Do not immediately apply a technique to transform it into something more acceptable. Just feel it. Let it be fully present. Let it take up space. Let it be exactly as large and as uncomfortable as it actually is. Because what happens in that full presence, in the act of allowing rather than resisting, is something remarkable. The feeling moves, not immediately, not dramatically, but it moves. Because feelings are not static, they are energy. And energy, when it is allowed to be fully present rather than suppressed or redirected, completes its natural cycle. It rises, it peaks, it passes. What you have been avoiding is not a permanent state. It is an interrupted cycle, a feeling that was not allowed to complete itself, perhaps because it arose at a time when completing it was not safe, or not permitted, or simply not understood. When you allow it to complete, when you give it full presence without resistance, it moves through you, rather than staying locked inside you. And in the space it leaves, something new becomes available. Not forced positivity, not manufactured optimism, genuine space. The space in which a new feeling, a new broadcast, can begin to form, organically, authentically, from the inside. This is the forbidden step, not optional, not a nice addition to your manifestation practice, the foundation of the entire system. The thing that must happen before everything else can work. Chapter 6. Rewiring at the root. Now that you understand what must come before manifestation, and now that you have learned the forbidden step of full presence with what is, we arrive at the heart of the practical work. How do you actually change the subconscious broadcast? How do you move from the old contract, the one written before you had any say in the matter, to a new one that is aligned with what you are consciously trying to create, rather than contradicting it from underneath? The answer lies in understanding how the subconscious was programmed in the first place, and using the same mechanism, deliberately, consciously, intentionally, to reprogram it. The subconscious was programmed through repetition and feeling, not through logic, not through instruction. through the repeated experience of a feeling in a particular context, until that feeling became the automatic, expected response to that context. You did not decide to feel anxious when you think about money. You did not choose to feel unworthy when success presents itself. You did not select the belief that good things do not last for people like you. These responses were built through repetition, through the accumulated weight of experiences that consistently produced a particular feeling in a particular context, until that pairing became automatic, until the context triggers the feeling before you are even consciously aware it has begun. This is the mechanism of subconscious programming, and it is also the mechanism of subconscious reprogramming. Repetition plus feeling. The same process that created the old program can create the new one, with one critical difference. This time, you are choosing the feeling deliberately. You are introducing it consciously, in a context that previously triggered the old response. You are using the language the subconscious actually understands, the language of felt embodied experience, to write a new program over the old one, not by forcing the new feeling over the resistance of the old, by first taking the forbidden step, being fully present with the old feeling until it completes its cycle, and then, in the space that creates, deliberately introducing the new one. This sequence is everything. Old feeling fully acknowledged, old feeling allowed to complete, new feeling deliberately introduced, new feeling reinforced through repetition. This is rewiring at the root. Let me make this concrete. Imagine a person who has a deep subconscious program around financial scarcity. The program runs something like this. Money is always just out of reach. When it arrives, something happens to take it away. There is never quite enough, and the effort of maintaining what there is exhausting. This program was not formed through a conscious decision. It was formed through the repeated experience, perhaps in childhood, perhaps over many years of adult life, of financial scarcity being the reality. The nervous system encoded it as the norm, as what to expect, as the truth of how the financial dimension of life works. Now this person begins working with the law of attraction. They affirm abundance. They visualize wealth. They do everything they are instructed to do. And something interesting happens. Small improvements occur. Money comes in that did not before, but it does not stay. Or it stays, but the ceiling remains exactly where it has always been. Or progress happens, but is followed by a setback that returns things almost exactly to where they started. This is the subconscious contract enforcing itself, not through some mysterious cosmic law, through the person's own nervous system, which has been trained to expect scarcity, which becomes subtly uncomfortable when abundance increases beyond what it considers normal, and which unconsciously engineers a return to the familiar. The familiar is safe to the subconscious, even when the familiar is painful. The unfamiliar, even when it is better, is perceived as a threat to the established pattern. This is why success can feel terrifying, why love can feel dangerous, why the very things we most want can be the things we most consistently avoid, even as we consciously pursue them. The subconscious is protecting the program. Rewiring at the root changes the program. Here is the process in full. First, identify the program, not intellectually, but sensorially. Feel into the area of your life where the ceiling exists. Notice the quality of feeling in your body when you approach that area. Not the thought, the feeling, the physical sensation. Where does it live in your body? What does it feel like? What is its quality? Tight, heavy, hollow, contracted. This is the signal. This is what the subconscious is broadcasting. Second, take the forbidden step. Be fully present with that feeling, not analyzing it, not trying to change it, simply feeling it with your full awareness. Breathe into it. Give it permission to be exactly as it is. Stay with this until something shifts. Not dramatically, a slight softening, a slight loosening, the beginning of the cycle completing itself. Third, locate the origin. When this feeling began, not the feeling itself, but the experience that formed the program it belongs to. You do not need to consciously remember a specific moment. Ask the feeling. Where did you come from? What were you trying to protect? Often something will arise. A memory, an image, a sense of a younger version of you in a particular situation. If nothing clear arises, that is fine. You can work with the feeling itself without knowing its origin. Fourth, update the record. This is the reprogramming step. Having made full contact with the old program, having allowed it to be fully present, having understood it with compassion, you now deliberately introduce a different felt reality, not by forcing positivity, by accessing a genuine felt sense of something different. Think of a time, however brief, however small, when the thing the program fears was not the reality. A moment of genuine ease with money, however fleeting. A moment of genuine safety in relationship. A moment when something worked out and the success stayed. It does not need to be dramatic. It needs to be real. A real felt memory of a different experience. Bring that memory into your body. Feel it fully. Not the thought of it, but the feeling of it. The quality of ease, or safety, or sufficiency that was present in that moment. Hold that feeling. Let it expand. Breathe into it. Let it become as large and as real as possible in your body right now. You are introducing new evidence to the subconscious. You are showing it, in its own language, that a different experience is possible. Fifth, repeat. This is where patience becomes essential. One session of this work will not rewrite a program built over decades of repetition. But one session is the beginning, and beginning is everything. Because every subsequent session adds another layer of new evidence. Every genuine felt experience of a different reality becomes another data point that the subconscious registers and factors into its predictions. Over time, with consistent, patient, compassionate repetition, the prediction changes, the expected reality changes, the broadcast changes. And when the broadcast changes, what the law of attraction responds with changes, not as a mysterious gift from the universe, as a mechanical consequence of a changed signal entering the field. This is rewiring at the root. This is what comes before manifestation. This is the part they left out of the teaching you received. It is not complicated, but it requires something that technique never requires. Genuine contact with yourself. Chapter 7. The System Revealed. You now have all the pieces. Let me give you the complete picture. The full system, assembled in the order in which it must be applied, with an understanding of why each step precedes the next. This is the forbidden system behind the law of attraction. Not forbidden because it was hidden in an ancient vault. Forbidden because acknowledging it honestly requires a kind of commitment that the commercial version of this knowledge was not willing to demand of its audience. The commitment to do real work, not technique, work. The work of becoming, at the deepest level, a different person. A person whose subconscious is no longer broadcasting a signal that contradicts what the conscious mind intends. Here is the system. Layer 1, radical honesty. Before any technique, before any visualization, before any affirmation or intention setting or vibration raising, you must know where you actually are. Not where you intend to be. Not where the program says you are in order to feel good. Where you actually are, in your body, in your feeling, in the quality of the signal you are currently broadcasting into the field. This requires stillness, not the performance of stillness. Genuine inner quiet. The kind that reveals what is actually present when the noise of activity and distraction is removed. In that quiet, you will find the truth. It may not be comfortable. It almost certainly will not match the intentions you have been setting. That discomfort is information. It is showing you the gap between the surface intention and the root broadcast. It is showing you exactly where the work needs to happen. Receive it without judgment. It is not evidence of failure. It is a map. Layer 2, full presence. Having found where you actually are, the next step is to be fully there, not to fix it. Not to immediately apply a technique to transform it. To be fully, compassionately, consciously present with the actual signal, the actual feeling that your subconscious is generating. This is the forbidden step, and it is the most powerful single act in the entire system, because full presence is the prerequisite for change. You cannot change what you will not see. You cannot see what you will not be still enough to feel. And you cannot feel what you have been too busy to allow. Full presence with the actual, current, honest state of your inner world is the act that makes everything else possible. Stay here until something softens, until the feeling, having been fully acknowledged, begins to complete its natural cycle and move through you, rather than remaining locked in place. Layer 3. Understanding with compassion. As you remain with full presence, something begins to emerge. Not always immediately, sometimes over several sessions of this practice. An understanding of the program you are working with, where it came from, what it was originally designed to protect you from, what version of you formed it, in what circumstances, for what good reasons. This understanding, held with genuine compassion rather than judgment, is transformative. Not because understanding automatically changes the program, but because it changes your relationship to the program. You stop fighting the subconscious pattern as though it were an enemy. You begin to work with it as what it actually is, an outdated protection, well-intentioned, that has simply outgrown its usefulness. You cannot force a door open that is being held shut from the inside, but you can explain, patiently and repeatedly, to the part of you that is holding it shut, that the danger it was designed to protect against is no longer present, that it is safe now to let go. This is what understanding with compassion does. It begins the negotiation with the part of you that has been maintaining the old contract. Layer 4. Introducing new evidence. Here is where the felt experience work becomes central. Having made full contact with the old program, having allowed it to complete, having understood it with compassion, you are now in the only state in which introducing new felt experience actually reaches the subconscious, rather than bouncing off it. Most people try to introduce positive feelings on top of an unacknowledged, unprocessed, fully active old program, and they wonder why it does not work. It does not work because the old program is still running at full strength. It has not been acknowledged. It has not been allowed to complete its cycle. It is actively defending itself against the intrusion of anything that contradicts it. This is not stubbornness. This is the natural response of any deeply encoded system to a surface-level input that does not match its programming. But when you have done the first 3 layers, when the old program has been seen, been felt, been understood with compassion, it is no longer at full defensive strength. It is, in a very real sense, willing to listen. And in that moment, the felt experience you deliberately introduce reaches a depth it cannot reach when the program is fully engaged. The visualization, in this state, becomes something different. It is not wishful thinking projected onto a resistant substrate. It is genuine felt experience, introduced into a prepared field. The subconscious registers it as real, as new evidence, and it begins to update. Layer 5. Repetition with presence. This is not a one-time process. Decades of subconscious programming are not undone in a single session. The contract you have been living under was written through thousands of repetitions of a particular experience. It will be rewritten through deliberate repetition of a new experience. What changes with repetition is not only the program itself, it is also your capacity to access the felt experience that reprograms it. The first time you attempt to genuinely feel the reality you are trying to create, not imagine it, not picture it, but actually feel it in your body, it may be faint, a ghost of the feeling, barely present. With repetition, it grows stronger, more accessible, more real. And as it becomes more real in your internal experience, it becomes more consistently present in your broadcast to the field. And as it becomes more consistently present in your broadcast, the law of attraction responds to it with greater consistency. Layer 6. Receiving. There is a final layer that is rarely discussed, the layer of receiving. Most people believe that the obstacle to manifestation is in the attracting. They work on the sending side, on the quality and consistency of their signal going out into the field. But there is another side to the equation. What happens when what you have been creating begins to arrive? For many people, more than would comfortably admit it, this is where a subtler form of the old program reasserts itself. The thing they have been working toward begins to appear. The opportunity presents itself. The relationship deepens. The financial opening arrives. And something in them hesitates. A subtle contraction. A sense of it being too good to be true. An impulse, not consciously chosen, to qualify it, or minimize it, or find the reason it will not work out. This is the subconscious contract, enforcing its expectations even as they are being exceeded. The work of receiving is the work of noticing this hesitation and choosing, consciously and repeatedly, to allow what is arriving to land, to let it be real, to let it be yours, to let the new evidence, the external evidence that the program has been changing and the field has been responding, actually register as new evidence, rather than being explained away by the old contract. This completes the cycle. Signal sent, field responds, signal received, reality updated, signal strengthened, field responds more consistently. This is the full system. This is what comes before manifestation. This is the forbidden system behind the law of attraction. Not a mystery, not a secret guarded by ancient gatekeepers. A process, a human process, available to anyone willing to do the work. Chapter 8. The practice. Let me give you the daily practice. Not a complex program with multiple stages and tracking sheets and accountability partners. One practice, simple in structure, demanding in what it requires. 20 minutes, daily. Here is the structure. Minutes 1 through 5. Enter stillness. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Take 3 slow, conscious breaths. Not forced, not controlled. Simply slow and full. With each breath, allow the pace of your internal experience to begin to match the pace of the breath. You are not trying to stop thinking. You are simply allowing the speed of everything to slow. Like water settling after it has been disturbed. You are not controlling the settling. You are allowing it. Minutes 5 through 10. Feel what is. Bring your attention gently to the area of your life where you are working. The area where your conscious intentions have not yet fully manifested. Do not think about this area. Feel into it. What is the quality of feeling in your body when your awareness rests here? Do not judge what you find. Do not try to change it. Simply feel it, with full permission for it to be exactly as it is. You are taking the forbidden step. You are doing what most people never do. Stay here for the full 5 minutes. If the feeling is uncomfortable, breathe into it. If emotions arise, let them. This is not a problem. This is the process working. What you are doing here is the most important thing you can do. You are seeing your actual broadcast. You are making visible what has been running invisibly beneath your conscious intentions. You are beginning to change it by seeing it. Minutes 10 through 15. Introduce the new felt experience. Having been fully present with what is, you now deliberately access the feeling of what you are creating. Not through imagination alone, through genuine felt sense. Think of the most real moment of the quality you are trying to build. The moment when you felt genuinely safe, or genuinely abundant, or genuinely loved, or genuinely capable of what you are reaching toward. The most real, the most bodily present, the most undeniable. Bring that moment into your body, not the memory of the thought of it, the feeling of it, the physical sensation that was present in that moment. Let it arise in your body now. Let it be present. Breathe into it. Let it expand. You do not need to force it to be larger than it is, but you do need to let it be as real as it actually is. This is new evidence for the subconscious. This is the language it understands. Stay here for the full 5 minutes. Minutes 15 through 20. Reside in the field. Release both, the old feeling and the new one. Simply rest in open awareness. No agenda, no technique. Simply present. In this space, you are neither the old program nor the new one. You are the awareness that contains both and is limited by neither. This is the ground from which genuine change emerges. Not from effort, from being. After 20 minutes, return to your day. That is the practice. Simple, unglamorous, requiring no special equipment, no particular belief system, no external validation, requiring only one thing: the willingness to show up for yourself, honestly, every day. This practice, done consistently, does several things. It develops your capacity for genuine felt experience, so that the new signal you are introducing becomes stronger and more accessible with every session. It reduces the defensive strength of the old program through the repeated act of being fully present with it, which is the act that allows it to begin to complete rather than remaining locked in perpetual activation. It creates a daily touchpoint with your actual inner state, so that you are never again in the position of spending years affirming one thing while the subconscious broadcasts another, with no awareness that the gap exists. And over time, with patience, with consistency, with the compassion for yourself that this work requires, it changes the broadcast, gradually, measurably, verifiably. The outer world begins to reflect a different inner signal, not because you performed it better, not because you finally found the right technique, not because the universe decided to cooperate, because the signal changed, at the root, where change actually sticks. We began this book with a question. Before you try to attract something into your life, who is doing the attracting? You now know the answer. It is not the version of you that shows up for the morning affirmation. It is not the version of you that holds the vision board and chooses to believe. It is not the version of you that has read every book, attended every seminar, and applied every technique with genuine commitment. All of those versions of you matter. They are real. Their intentions are real. But they are not the ones whose signal the law of attraction is primarily responding to. The one whose signal governs everything is the one who formed before any of those other versions existed. The one who was shaped by your earliest experiences. The one whose programs run beneath every conscious thought you have ever had, in the deep background of your mind, broadcasting a signal that has been extraordinarily consistent your entire life. That one. That is the one you have just spent this book getting to know, and that is the one you now know how to reach. Not by fighting it, not by forcing it, not by drowning it out with more positive input, by meeting it where it lives, in feeling, in the body, in the honest, quiet, unglamorous work of full presence with what is, followed by the patient, deliberate, compassionate introduction of what can be. This is not the end of your journey with this material. It is the beginning, the real beginning, the one that starts at the root rather than the surface, the one that leads somewhere real. Everything you have been trying to create, everything you have been applying the law of attraction toward with all the tools and techniques you have gathered, is still possible. More than possible. It is waiting for a signal that is clear enough to draw it to you. You now know how to create that signal, not by wanting it harder, by becoming it more fully. One day of practice at a time, one honest moment of full presence at a time, one quiet revolution at the root of who you are, followed, inevitably, by the corresponding revolution in the world around you. That is the forbidden system. That is what comes before manifestation. That is what this book was written to give you. Use it. Let us make this even more concrete. Imagine two people sitting in the same room, both practicing the same visualization exercise, both holding the image of financial abundance, both speaking the same affirmations, both reading from the same program. Person A carries at the subconscious level a deep and unexamined sense that financial ease is normal, that money flows toward those who do good work, that there is always enough. This program was written not through deliberate practice, but through years of accumulated experience that encoded exactly this pattern. Person B carries, also unexamined, A program that says money is hard to hold, that when things improve, something will happen to balance it back out. That ease is temporary, and crisis is the baseline. Both people do the same practice for 30 days. Person A notices that the practice feels almost unnecessary. Things they want seem to show up with a regularity that confirms what their subconscious already believed. They attribute this to the practice, not understanding that the practice was simply reinforcing what was already there. Person B notices initial excitement, followed by frustration. Small improvements appear and then stall. Their ceiling remains exactly where it always was. They wonder if they are doing something wrong. They try harder. They affirm more insistently. They attend the next seminar. The problem was never technique. The problem was the signal beneath the technique. Old, consistent, deeply encoded, operating with complete precision to produce exactly the reality it predicted. Until you address the subconscious program directly, you are optimizing the surface of a system whose root is working against you. This is why people can intellectually understand that they are worthy and simultaneously feel, in their body, as though they are not. The intellectual understanding lives in the conscious mind. The sense of unworthiness lives in the subconscious body. And the body's truth, being older and deeper and more fundamental to the nervous system's basic operation, consistently overrides the intellectual position. You have felt this. Everyone who has worked with these ideas has felt this. The moment when the affirmation feels hollow, when the visualization feels like pretending, when the gap between what you are saying to yourself and what your body believes to be true becomes undeniable. That gap is not a problem to be fixed through better technique. It is a map. It is showing you exactly where the work is. It is showing you that the language being used to address the problem, the language of conscious thought, of logic, of chosen belief, is not the language in which the problem was written, and therefore cannot be the language in which it is resolved. The resolution requires meeting the subconscious where it lives, in feeling, in sensation, in the body's honest, pre-verbal, pre-rational knowing about how things actually are. This meeting, this genuine contact with the subconscious at its own level, in its own language, is what the next chapters of this book are about. Not around it, not above it, through it. Here is what going to the root actually looks like in practice. It does not look like a dramatic breakdown. It does not require reliving trauma or engaging in extended periods of emotional processing. It does not mean spending years in therapy before you are allowed to work on creating the life you want. It looks like 5 quiet minutes. 5 minutes of genuine stillness, in which you stop applying any technique and simply feel what is actually present. 5 minutes of honest contact with the signal you are currently broadcasting, beneath all the effort you have been making to broadcast something different. In those 5 minutes, you will learn more about the actual state of your manifestation capacity than in a year of affirmations. Because you will be looking at the thing itself, rather than at the things you have been stacking on top of it to avoid seeing it. And what you will find, more often than not, is not a monster. It is something much smaller, much more specific, much more workable. A precise, nameable feeling, a particular quality of expectation, a specific story about how things tend to go for you in this particular area of life. A story that was written a long time ago, by a version of you who had very good reasons for writing it, and that has simply been running on autopilot ever since, without being questioned. When you see it clearly, in its specificity, in its origin, in its context, it loses the quality of absolute truth it has always seemed to carry. It becomes what it actually is: a pattern, a learned response, a program that can be updated. This is what going to the root produces, not a solution immediately, but the end of the problem being invisible, and invisible problems cannot be solved. This is one of the most important things to understand about why people who are genuinely committed to changing their lives often find themselves stuck in patterns that seem to defy all logic and effort. It is not a failure of commitment. It is not a failure of the techniques they are using. It is the subconscious enforcing the familiar. The subconscious does not evaluate familiar as good or bad. It evaluates it as safe. Safe in the sense of known, predictable, consistent with the established model of how things are. When you begin to move beyond the familiar, when the external circumstances of your life begin to shift in ways that exceed what the subconscious considers normal, the subconscious responds with something that feels, from the inside, like anxiety, or self-sabotage, or a sudden loss of motivation, or an inexplicable desire to return to the behaviors that created the current reality. This is not weakness. This is the nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting the established pattern against disruption. The path through this is not to fight the protective response. Fighting it directly gives it something to push against, and it is much stronger than willpower. The path through is to renegotiate with it, to show the subconscious, through accumulated experience, that the new territory is safe, that the expanded reality does not pose the threat it has been treating it as posing. This happens through the same mechanism as the original programming, repeated experience of safety in the new territory, which is what the practice in Chapter 8 gives you. Let me give you an example of what this looks like. A woman had been working with manifestation practices for 3 years. She was committed, she was consistent, she was doing everything the teaching had told her to do, and she was making some progress. But there was a ceiling, particularly around her career. Every time she approached a significant advancement, something happened to prevent it. An opportunity fell through. A relationship dynamic at work became difficult. She found herself pulling back from the edge of something larger, just when it seemed within reach. She came to the forbidden step reluctantly. She had been avoiding it because she suspected what she might find, and she was right. When she sat with genuine stillness and felt into the career area of her life, what she found was this: a persistent, low-level sense that becoming too visible would be dangerous. Not a thought, a body sensation, a contraction in her chest whenever she imagined stepping fully into her professional power. She stayed with it. She breathed into it. She let it be as large as it actually was. And then, without forcing it, without analyzing it, an image arose. A memory of being 11 years old and correcting a teacher who had made a factual error in front of the class. The teacher's response had been cold and publicly humiliating. The lesson her nervous system had taken from that moment was simple and absolute. Being seen as more capable than expected is dangerous. That program had been running for 27 years, protecting her from a threat that no longer existed, enforcing a ceiling on her professional advancement with mechanical consistency, regardless of how faithfully she practiced her morning affirmations. When she saw it, when it became specific and nameable and understood with compassion for the 11-year-old who had needed that protection, something in her relaxed. Not fixed, not gone, but no longer invisible. And invisible problems, as I said before, cannot be solved. The next phase of her work was introducing new evidence, building, through the practice, a different felt experience of what it means to be fully seen in her professional capacity. Slowly, patiently, session by session. Within 4 months, her outer circumstances had begun to reflect the inner shift. Not magically, mechanically. The signal had changed. The field responded. There is one more element of the rewiring process that I want to address, because it is the element most often neglected, the element of time. We live in a culture that expects rapid results, that treats patience as a failure of faith, that interprets the absence of immediate change as evidence that the method is not working. This interpretation is wrong, and it is causing enormous unnecessary suffering among people who are doing genuine, effective, important inner work. The subconscious programs that govern your current reality were built over years. Some of them have been running for decades. They are deeply encoded, richly reinforced, and structurally integrated into your nervous system's fundamental architecture. They do not change overnight, not because the process is ineffective, because the depth of the change being made requires time to fully integrate. What you will notice first is not a dramatic outer change. What you will notice first is something subtler, a slight loosening, a sense that the old story is not quite as absolute as it was. A moment where you catch yourself about to repeat an old pattern, and something in you pauses, notices, and chooses differently. These are not small things. These are the signs of a system genuinely shifting at the root. These are the early evidence of a new program beginning to establish itself. Hold them. Acknowledge them. Let them be the reinforcement that keeps you in the practice. Because the outer shift will come, but it comes last. The inner shift comes first, then the quality of experience. Then the outer circumstances begin to reflect both. This sequence is not optional. It is how the mechanism actually works. Trust the sequence. I want to address one more thing before we move to the practice. You may be asking if this is how it actually works. If these 6 layers are the real mechanism, why have you never heard this explained this clearly before? The answer is not that this knowledge is new. It is ancient. It has been preserved in various forms in every major wisdom tradition in human history. The understanding that surface-level intention must be supported by deep-level alignment is not a recent discovery. The reason you have not heard it explained this clearly in the context of the law of attraction is simpler. The self-help industry is not structured around your permanent independence. It is structured around your ongoing engagement with its products. A teaching that produces people who are genuinely, permanently aligned at the root level. People who have done the inner work and no longer need external guidance to navigate their inner world is not commercially viable. A teaching that keeps you perpetually hopeful, perpetually applying the next technique, perpetually consuming the next book and the next course and the next seminar is commercially extremely viable. This is not a conspiracy. It is simply the natural consequence of commercial incentives applied to spiritual teaching. And it is the reason that the most important part of this knowledge, the part about what must happen before manifestation, the part about the subconscious contract, and the forbidden step, and the root-level rewiring, has been consistently, quietly, addition by addition, and course by course, left out of the popular version of this teaching. You now have it, the complete picture, the full sequence, the part that was missing. What you do with it is yours to decide. A note on resistance. You will encounter it, not from outside, from inside. The same subconscious programs that have been governing your reality will also govern your relationship to this practice. When you begin to work at the root level, when you begin to do the thing that actually changes the signal, the old programs will resist. Not dramatically, quietly. You will find reasons the practice is not necessary today. The 20 minutes will feel like too long. You will be tempted to replace the genuine inner contact with a more comfortable version of it, to skim the surface of the forbidden step rather than actually taking it, to introduce the new felt experience without first doing the work of full presence with the old one. This is the old program protecting itself. It knows, in whatever way a subconscious pattern can know things, that this practice is what changes it, and it would prefer to stay the same. When you notice this resistance, and you will notice it, treat it with the same compassion you would bring to any other old pattern you are working to understand. It is not your enemy. It is the proof that you are working at the right level. The deeper the resistance, the closer you are to what needs to be seen. Keep going, one session at a time, one honest contact with yourself at a time. This is how it changes. This is how everything changes. Before we go there, let me give you one more piece of context that will make everything that follows more precise. There is a reason the concept of coherence is so central to this system, and it is a reason that goes beyond psychology into something that physics, at its most fundamental level, is beginning to describe. The universe, as we currently understand it at the quantum level, does not operate the way the classical Newtonian model suggested. In the Newtonian model, the world is made of separate objects, interacting through predictable forces. You are here. The object you want is there, and the question is simply how to get from one to the other. The quantum model tells a different story. At the subatomic level, particles do not have fixed properties until they are observed. The act of observation, of conscious attention, participates in determining what becomes real. The universe, at its most fundamental level, is not a collection of fixed things. It is a field of potential. A field in which what actually manifests depends, in ways physicists are still working to fully understand, on the nature of the consciousness engaging with it. This is not mysticism. This is the leading edge of physics. It is strange and counterintuitive, and profoundly challenging to the classical worldview, but it is well documented. It is reproducible in controlled experiments, and it has implications for understanding how human consciousness interacts with reality that the self-help industry, remarkably, has almost never engaged with directly. The implication that matters most for our purposes is this: if the field of potential responds to the nature of the observing consciousness, then the quality of your consciousness, its coherence, its clarity, its degree of internal alignment, is not a metaphor for how you attract things. It is a literal description of the mechanism through which you participate in what becomes real. A fragmented, contradictory consciousness introduces a fragmented, contradictory signal into the field. A coherent consciousness introduces a clear, consistent, powerful signal, and the field responds to both with equal accuracy. This is not a belief system. It is an operating principle, and operating with it consciously, developing genuine coherence through the process described in this book, is not about spiritual development in some abstract sense. It is about learning to operate the mechanism that has always been operating, whether you were learning to operate it or not. Here is something crucial to understand about the updating process. The subconscious does not require your entire history to change. It does not need every wound to be healed, every trauma to be resolved, every shadow to be fully integrated before the program can shift. It requires new, genuine, consistently repeated experience of a different possibility. Think about how the original programs were formed. They were not formed through a single dramatic event in most cases. They were formed through the accumulated weight of repeated experiences that consistently pointed in the same direction. Consistent pointing, that is the mechanism. Which means that the reversal of the mechanism does not require understanding every experience that contributed to the original program. It requires consistent pointing in a different direction. Repeated, genuine felt experience of a different possibility, until the accumulated weight of that new evidence begins to shift the prediction the subconscious is making. You do not need to undo the past. You need to consistently create a different present experience. At the level of genuine feeling, not performed feeling, not wishful thinking, the felt sense of a different truth, accessed as genuinely and as consistently as you can, in daily practice. This is what changes the contract. Not understanding alone, not insight alone, not intellectual agreement alone. New felt experience, repeated until it becomes the new baseline expectation, until the subconscious begins to predict it as normal. And when the subconscious predicts an experience as normal, it begins to generate the behavior, the perception, the energetic broadcast that produces that experience. This is the complete loop. New felt experience introduced deliberately. Subconscious registers as evidence. Prediction updates. Behavior, perception, and broadcast shift. External circumstances begin to reflect the new prediction. New experiences confirm the new program. Loop reinforces itself. This is not magic. This is neuroplasticity, applied consciously, with an understanding of the language the nervous system actually speaks. And here is what meeting the subconscious where it lives actually feels like, because knowing what to expect will help you recognize when you are doing it correctly. It feels uncomfortable, not in a dramatic or overwhelming way usually, but distinctly uncomfortable in the specific way that honest self-contact always is. The way that looking directly at something you have been looking away from always is. It feels like the opposite of what most manifestation practice feels like. Most manifestation practice feels good. It is designed to feel good. The visualization of a positive future generates genuine positive emotion. The affirmation of what you want produces a real sense of forward momentum and hope. These feelings are not false. They are real. They are simply not the feelings of meeting the subconscious where it lives. Meeting the subconscious where it lives feels like stopping the forward motion, like sitting still when everything in you wants to be doing something, like being with what is, instead of generating what you prefer. It feels, in the early stages, like giving up, like abandoning the positive practice in favor of something that seems to point in the wrong direction. It is not giving up, it is going deeper, and the discomfort of it is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. It is evidence that you are finally doing the thing that has been left out. That discomfort, that particular quality of honest inner contact, is the sensation of the work actually happening. Learn to recognize it. Learn to stay with it. Not to wallow in it, not to amplify it, but to remain present with it long enough for it to complete its cycle. Because when it completes, when the feeling has been fully present and fully felt, and is moved through rather than staying locked, what arises in its place is not just relief. It is space. Genuine, open, undefended inner space. And in that space, something becomes possible that was not possible before. The introduction of a genuinely new felt experience, not layered on top of resistance, introduced into openness. This is why the sequence matters so much. This is why you cannot skip the forbidden step and go directly to the positive practice. Not because the rule book says so, because the mechanism requires it. Resistance blocks genuine felt experience. Full presence releases resistance. And genuine felt experience, in an open, released system, is what the subconscious actually registers as new evidence. Let me close this chapter with something I want you to carry forward as you move into the practice. The system I have described in these pages is not a shortcut. I want to be honest about that. It is more efficient than anything you have tried before, because it is working at the level where change actually happens, rather than the level where change is performed. But it requires more of you than technique requires. It requires genuine contact with yourself, daily. Not the version of yourself you are trying to become. The version of yourself that actually exists right now, with all its contradictions and old programs and places where the ceiling has always been. That contact, that willingness to meet yourself honestly and completely, without immediately trying to fix or improve or redirect what you find, is the foundation of everything this system produces. And it is also, in my experience, the thing that most changes people's relationship to themselves over time. Not just their external circumstances, their relationship to themselves. People who do this work consistently report something that surprises them. They expected the practice to produce better results, and it does. But what they did not expect was how it would change the quality of their relationship with their own inner life. The anxiety that had always been present in the background begins to quiet. Not because life becomes easier. It does not always become easier. But because the relationship to what life brings changes. The capacity to be with what is, rather than constantly fighting to make it something else, develops into a genuine quality of inner stability. This is not a side effect. This is, in some ways, the point. Because a person who has developed genuine inner stability, who can be fully present with what is without being destabilized by it, is precisely the person from whom the coherent signal emerges. Not because they have suppressed their fears, because they have met their fears with enough presence and compassion that those fears are no longer running the broadcast from underground. The signal becomes coherent when the person becomes whole. And the work of becoming whole is the work of genuinely meeting yourself every day, with honesty, with patience, with the willingness to stay when everything in you wants to move. This is the practice. This is the beginning. Closing the beginning. There is a difference between knowing something and living something. You now know the forbidden system. You know that the law of attraction responds not to your conscious intention, but to your dominant subconscious broadcast. You know that the gap between those two, the gap that keeps most people's manifestations permanently incomplete, is not closed through better technique. It is closed through the patient, honest, compassionate work of bringing the subconscious into alignment with the conscious intention. You know the 6 layers: radical honesty, full presence, understanding with compassion, introducing new evidence, repetition, receiving. You know the daily practice: 20 minutes, simple structure, unglamorous requirement. You know the forbidden step, the one that makes everything else work, and why it has been left out of every popular version of this teaching. You know all of this. Now the question is whether you will live it. And I want to say something honest about that question. Most people who encounter this information will not do the practice. Not because they do not want what the practice produces. Because doing the practice requires something that reading about the practice does not require. It requires showing up for yourself, honestly, daily, with no guarantee of when the results will become visible. It requires faith, not the performative faith of believing hard enough, but the quieter, more demanding faith of continuing to do the work when you cannot yet see where it is leading. And it requires, perhaps most of all, the willingness to find out what is actually there, beneath the techniques, beneath the intentions, beneath the careful architecture of the self you have constructed, and to be with it, fully, without immediately trying to make it into something more acceptable. This is what the people who do get the results actually do, not the ones who know the most techniques, the ones who do the deepest honest work. If you are one of those people, if something in what you heard today recognized itself in this teaching, then you already know what to do. Start tomorrow morning, 20 minutes. One honest contact with what is, followed by one genuine felt experience of what can be, repeated daily until the signal changes, until what you have been trying to create begins to find you. Not because you forced it, because you became the person from whom it could not stay away. That person is not a future possibility. That person is already here, waiting, beneath everything you have been adding on top of yourself, to be fully seen. See them. That is where everything begins.